testify and they plead the fifth. Can you imagine if you were dragged before an IRS auditor and you said, you know what, with all due respect, I'm going to plead the fifth. Can you imagine? Yes, sir. From where? Woodworth, North Dakota. Impact your roads, right? Okay, he's from Woodworth, and his concern is about losing mainline rail service to their grain elevator. And there's for the past 10 years or so, and this has, of course, been a trend. We've got some other engineers that this has been a trend of the railroad. It's been the trend of everything. It's consolidation, right? Larger facilities that accommodate 110 or 120 nowadays, even car unit trains. And the abandoning of track, much like Woodward. On the road. So when that happens, what occurs, of course, is there are still farm-to-market challenges, right? There's still fertilizer, the product that comes in for sale, and then the product that goes out from places like Woodworth and many, many others. And what has to happen is in order for the railroad to abandon that track, and you've already mentioned that for 10 years they haven't kept it up. That's part of the formula, right? That's part of the formula. And so they go to the federal government anyway, I'm just losing track of the agencies. Surface Transportation Board, the National Surface Transportation Board, and they apply to be able to do that, and I don't know that the NTSB has ever turned the railroad down. I don't know if it probably has happened, but I don't know of one. And it's all in the name of efficiency, and we like efficiency. Walmart is not going away. I always say that. Walmart's just going to get bigger, right? Well, the same has been true of the railroad. That said, there's a cost to that. Even never mind the convenience of the farmer and the economy of a local community like Woodworth. Maybe all that's left at Woodworth, I don't know, but you have the issue of that grain still has to get to the unit train, which means wear and tear on our highways and our roads. And we have a massive highway road challenge, bridge challenge going forward as well at the federal level. Make sure before I leave that I get the specific information so I can take it up with the National Transportation Service Board. Have they started abandonment proceedings yet? You know, have they applied to the NTSB? Is it a Woodworth on BNSF? Okay. It's a short line. Okay, yeah, Chuck would know all this. Let's put a pasta plant there and solve it, Chuck. Come on. We used to do that together. So I'm familiar. I'm not specifically familiar with this case, but what can we do about it? Well, here's what I advocate for, and to the degree we can do it at a federal level, great. To the degree we do it I do it as an ombudsman, I'll do that. Is the short line situation, keeping more of the short lines open and available and viable, so that at the very least we don't have this wear and tear on our highway system. All of that same product has to still get there. So if it's not going on a short line to the unit train, then it's going on the highway. So yes. Okay, another important point. The short line, the railroad line is 20 miles, but by truck it'd be about 50. So it's really a complicating factor. That's a little more than most situations. So let's make sure I get the details on that, Daryl, before we leave, so we can take this up as a case. Wow. Okay, you guys, how are we doing on time? Because I do have another. Okay. Okay, yes. Oh, he has a question about the flat tax. I'm sorry, it's time to go. No. Comprehensive tax reform. Comprehensive tax reform is one of the things that's easy to talk about until you get there, but we're going to try it. There have been many hearings in the House on comprehensive tax reform, Because Dave Camp, the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, is 1,000% committed to this. I don't expect there'll be a flat tax per se, as like one, absolutely just one rate, but there might be two. And so they've had working groups in the various areas, categories of the tax code, bipartisan working groups that have worked with stakeholders, dozens of hearings. I mean dozens, lots of input. Dave, the chairman, has met with every single member of Congress one-on-one to get their feedback on it. It's been the most comprehensive process I've seen in Congress. On the Senate side, Max Baucus from Montana announced his retirement too soon. Because we from North Dakota know this all too well, that when you announce your retirement from the U.S. Senate soon, Harry Reid puts you out of costume much sooner. And so he's hit a brick wall because Harry Reid has basically put a kibosh to tax reform in the Senate. Unless we can give him $1 trillion extra in tax increases. We're working on a neutral tax reform. What's being talked about at this point is lowering the rate, the high rate, especially the corporate rate, to 28%. In fact, 28%. In fact, the president has said he wants to. He's willing to do it. We don't want to go along with the 28% rate and then the closing of loopholes just for corporations, because the vast majority of people aren't corporations. The vast majority of businesses aren't corporations. The vast majority of workers don't work for corporations. So the only people we'd be helping would be corporations, closing their deductions and loopholes, if you will, and then lowering the rate just for them. There are a lot of issues, Chris, that relate not only to what the rate is for individuals and businesses and what deductions are allowed and aren't allowed, starting with the home mortgage deduction, charitable deductions, normal and necessary costs of doing business deductions, property tax deductions, all those things. But on top of that, we have a big repatriation of money issue in the United States. We have a lot of American capital and money in other countries. Microsoft is a good example. By the way, before I forget, with regard to Microsoft, back to immigration. Do you know that Microsoft has 6,000 job openings? Did I mention 6,000? Anyway, so companies like Microsoft, Bobcat, Doosan, both American companies and foreign companies, there are trillions of dollars we'd like to get invested back in the United States. The problem is that without a territorial tax system, they pay taxes in the country they're in, and they have to pay taxes back here if they bring it back here, and so the incentive is to keep their money overseas. That's not good for American coffers, federal coffers. That's not good for American jobs. It's not good for American investment. So it's a very complicated issue that I expect, Chris. Now here's a little process lesson. This is an issue that could come up very quickly. And the reason it could is because Dave Camp is term limited out. The House Republicans put term limits in for chairman. He's at the last term. He's committed to doing this, and there's a strong wave that supports comprehensive tax reform. When I talked about the big hopper with lots of big issues, this one could become one of those negotiating issues very quickly. When you see that, don't panic and say, oh, those rascals are trying to push another big bill through, with urgency. The reality is this is a bill that has been debated for about 3 years in lots of appropriate forms. It's just that you won't hear about it until it's all of a sudden on the docket. We're going to fight hard to make sure that the home mortgage deduction stays there, and we've got a number of other things. One of the things I'll tell you about the tax code is, you know how complicated it is, and it costs billions of dollars just to comply with it, which it gets to your point of a flatter tax is better for everybody, because compliance costs it's a regulatory cost. It's like any other regulation. It's one of the worst. We could get rid of a lot of those IRS agents if we had a simpler tax code, couldn't we? But I guess let me just wrap up by saying, it's just one of those things that's going to come up quickly. It may come up yet this fall. In fact, I have expected it will come up this fall. It will not be a flat tax, I assure you, but it'll be a flatter, simpler code that does away with a lot of deductions and loopholes, but with a lower rate. And it's very hard, you guys, to get to revenue neutral. It's very hard. One of the things you find out when the CPAs are people too, Chuck. Come on. So are lawyers. Now stop beating them up. But what you find when you start digging into the code, that things that you think are objectionable, you start seeing the purpose of them in the first place. And we haven't had reform since 1986. So So over the years, as the code gets added to, it never gets subtracted from, it only gets added to, it gets bigger and bigger and more cumbersome and more cumbersome. And all of those things had some, most of the time, even a noble purpose when they were done. It's just that aggregately, they create a big bureaucracy that's very cumbersome. You guys, with that, we've gone a little over. I really appreciate your time. This helps me tremendously, and I hope it honors you. It honors me that you would take the time to be here. And we handed out some cards. You know, I do a radio town hall on 5 stations across the state every Wednesday from when do I do it? From 10 to 11 Central Time. It's heard here on KFYR. It's just an open forum. I just take phone calls for an hour. Once in a while it gets scooped up with a hearing schedule or some other thing that I can't change, but then I try to make it up the next day. But just know that your input is very important to me. I want to tell you one other thing that I do. It's really important to me, is when you send me a letter or an email, and sometimes it may take a little while for us to get back to you, I want you to know that I sign every single letter personally before I send it to you. And the reason I do that is for 2 reasons. One is to honor you, because if you've taken the time to write to me, that honors me. And I want to honor you. The second thing it does, it helps me stay connected. So when I sign, right now, there's no one here from the credit unions, but they have barraged me with these postcards. So I've been signing a lot of credit union letters, and I love it. I love it because if I'm on the airplane and I'm signing letters, and I see 400 of them on one issue, I know it's a big issue. I know it's a big issue, and I know where they're coming from. I look at every name, and for what it's worth, I pray over everyone. Thanks.
Good job.
That was a good question. Thank you for asking.
Yes.
Okay, well, great to see you. Yeah, let me know.
Which would be open. Hey, okay. I will second that. My brother called me.
In air and preventive.
Supposed to remind me when I leave things on the table.